Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets, joined once again by Derek Jonhson. Derek and I have done several shows over the last several months, military roundtables and all kind of crazy stuff. I really enjoy Derek's insights. He's got a wide range of information that he shares. He's got a great website. If you've never been to it, the 1776. What's the name of that? The documents.info. That's where he's got excellent information. If you've never been there, highly recommend it. It'll be in the links. So, Derek, I mean, you've been really exposing a lot of stuff throughout a long time. I mean, I just saw a picture where you're hanging out with President Trump, and you're speaking, and President Trump, is listening to you talk to him. So it's kind of interesting to see, that you're having some kind of influence there because your insights, I believe, are incredible. What do you think is going on right now as far as like the military, coming after the deep state? What do you think is happening?
Well, I keep telling people I know that they think that some of us are, dragging this out, and I'm like, I mean, as long as the law shows we're in a continuity of government, which it does, we're in a partial continuity of government, then there's still some moves on the chessboard that they're still moving about. I think a lot of times people think because, someone of your status, a former SEAL team chief or, Colonel Sellers, the other night they asked Colonel Sellers a question. He's like, that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know that. And I mean, here we're talking about a full bird colonel, right? And I think so many people get caught up in titles the wrong way as well. It's great because you need them, but then you get caught up the wrong way thinking that just because you're a SEAL team, SITS or CIA or that you have all the answers. And I'm like, no, there's no way to know that. If we did, we would never have any conflicts because we'd always have the answers, ahead of time, and we could nip a lot of things in the bud a lot easier. So, but right now it's genius to me what they're still doing because the end goal, I know some people out there just cannot comprehend that liberals or anything polar opposite than you should want to be brought onto the team. But that is exactly what the end goal is. It's never supposed to look like this. I hate the term politics because it was never supposed to be politics. It was supposed to be representatives working for us, the people, if you didn't want to be a representative. And they're supposed to do what we want them to do and what we need them for. And so as population grew, well, we needed representatives. We needed more representatives. And so, I don't like using names, but there's been a few examples out there of some people that I might as well just use one, but look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is someone that says a lot of MAGA stuff, says a lot of your key terms, but actually said something that contradicts everything. Now, some could still be playing roles in a different manner, but at this point in the game, saying that not our war is not what you want to hear from any kind of patriot or MAGA or whatever you want to title it, Republican conservative. So when Mark Levine called her a nimwit, I'm like, Mark Levine, he's in a role like you and I. He's not a congressman or woman, or a senator or anything like that. So he's just a guy who's sitting back here going, well, the Constitution says this, and the Declaration of Independence says this, and he's a foundational character. And he could, anybody can have a skeleton in their closet as far as like he could be being puppeted out there on Fox News, but he's still not a representative. So her saying that, and then you saw Ted Cruz get annihilated by Tucker Carlson for not knowing anything about Iran. And so there's another thing right there. So if you go back to the 2016 campaign, President Trump said that he said it this way, and he pointed at him. He said, this guy right here is the biggest liar out of all of these on the stage. And he was pointing to Ted Cruz. And then he called him Robin Hood. He had a nickname for him back then, called him Robin Hood. He said, this guy borrowed from Citibank and Goldman and Sachs and didn't report it in his reports. So, Goldman Sachs was one of there's a 385-page report on, and maybe more than that, but that's one of them that shows how Goldman Sachs was the key component of the 2008 financial recession. That's not someone you'd want to be borrowed money from and then that be on your record. All this stuff is still a takedown, and it's teaching people still, though, that like you and I have been talking about this for going on 3 years that I've known you, and teaching people consistency. And then what information you provide them, what kind of information is it? Is it something you can sink your teeth into that's, it's credible? And a lot of these people they just talk. Now, sometimes talks are productive, perspective, but I've always said if perspective don't lead to a solution, then it's just a bunch of hot air. And so a lot of these people are doing that, and a lot of patriots, conservatives, Republicans are learning firsthand to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And the enemies closer are the ones who talk more like you and replicate you. A friend's going to be honest with you. Hey, Jaco, I don't think that shirt looks good on you, or but can do it in a way that don't hurt your feelings, but still be honest with you. Your enemies who are trying to replicate you, they're not doing that. They're brown nosers and posers, and they're saying everything they can to look the part, and they're pretty good, some of them. So that's what a lot of people are seeing right now with that play out. And then you see like Thomas the Massey, McConnell going, Rand Paul not running again. So a lot of these guys are being taken out, and it's just a continuous showing the continuous draining of the swamp. And there will be whatever you want to call it, there's going to be a silver lining in the sky for people, but I don't think it's not a destination stop. There won't be a hard stop day where they go, well, here's everything we did. It's a journey. And it's just getting people to see that.
Yeah, that's. I like how you brought up Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz was vociferously, opposed to Trump becoming president, and really attacked him almost every day, horrifically.
Oh, big time.
And then we had Trump say something that basically was all stop, and then Ted Cruz went away. He said that his father happened to be running around the streets during the time frame where JFK was assassinated, and then it was like whoop, from his end. So we know that a lot of this stuff is basically military protocols and so forth that Trump understands on a very high level. That's why I think he likes to have you around, and you understand this on a very high level as well. The military symbolism, military operations, military law, military optics. You are a master at this. I have never heard of anyone talk in any. I mean, because you even said you saw Colonel Sellers, kind of outside my realm, but for you just have eaten a lot of this stuff up and give us really good insights. I think one of the best ones that I liked was during the when Biden came in and they did a military funeral for him, and you basically lined it all out. And I was like, wow, that is absolute. And then I did my own research and I dug deeper myself, and it's like, you absolutely scored 100% on that one. So good job. So we're seeing more of that. A lot of people ask us some very in-depth questions. One of those the other night is like, do you see President Trump as a good president? And I said, I don't see him as just a good president. I see him as the best president in history, and he will probably go down as the best president in history. So, many of us are looking at this as, an incredible opportunity to see this our America transform in a good way. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, and I feel the same way. I mean, he's the Cyrus the Great of our era. People don't realize what Cyrus the Great did. Taking out the Babylonians. There's no way. And I mean this with all due respect to, President Reagan and even Gerald Ford and different people in history. That's what I tell people all the time. Quit going by Google research on, Digital Warriors was meant to be like true secret military, true military. Now, I'm not telling people not to read and research, but you got to be careful with that, because it can send you down a spiral and you end up on some wrong people. But like it's the bringing up President Reagan and President Ford. There's been good people throughout history. They haven't all been bad just because the swamp that surrounded them. It just was more infiltrated with that, and then they created their own system. But there were some good patriots along the way that thought that they could, rally the troops, as the saying is. And when Reagan got too charismatic and Ford did, they fired shots at him. And so, and even like George Wallace, who I bring this up all the time to show people, since now we're kind of getting a fundamental reset. It's not a change, but it's a fundamental reset. But George Wallace was the governor of Alabama, and he made a presidential run. And he was controversial to a lot of people because they didn't pay attention to context and detail and what mattered. He's the one who stood on the front of the University of Alabama and wouldn't let the black student into the building. But what he was saying back then as governor, he said, I'm the governor. I don't write the law. I don't pass the law, right? I'm to enforce the law. And as the law sits right now, the law says this. And he said, what kind of governor would I look like if I went against the law? See, he didn't stand in front of the building because the female was black or a female, and so a lot of people don't understand that terminology. And if we don't have a basis that we all stand on, and the principle that we stand on, and the foundation that we stand on, then you can always grasp for straws at any one moment, any one time. It'd be like being in the military, and then all of a sudden, some young buck private telling a full bird colonel, that what he's not going to do and this, that, and other. I mean, it would kind of be that kind of, it's a parallel kind of principle to look at. And so that don't work. I tell people all the time, but hey, there's one place that is real solid on the chain of command and the structure and the discipline is the military, because you do have the guys up here that predominantly go by that. So when you look at President Trump, I've made a case by law that shows that he hasn't really been he had to have a presidential title because of federal laws, but in reality, he's been a choice by the military the whole time as a supreme commander. And of course, when you're talking, you have to be careful with that in another way, but he's a supreme commander, not a king, but he's done everything by the T of the Constitution, but also by our foundation and the Federalist Papers. When you go over and read all these Supreme Court cases that he has filed, and it's numerous petitions, but like the one that when I was in South Dakota, and I text your wife and I said, hey, you got to get Jacko on. Like, we got to do this one about this case that President Trump has filed about SEAL Team 6 specifically. When you go read all other references in these petitions, Federalist Papers are listed all throughout, and the numbers of which ones to look at. So President Trump is the most, and I'm not knocking all the others again, but where we are in time, where we are in history, what needed to happen, fundamental reset back to our foundation. He is the most presidential president by our foundation known to man.
Yeah, fantastic. So we saw with Uranium One, Hillary Clinton, Obama, basically they were setting up Iran with nukes, eventual nukes, and same thing with I believe North Korea. So we saw President Trump, walk across the line, shake hands with Kim, and I thought that was incredible. I thought that was coming, and he did it. I think at some point we may see a new regime. I think it's actually happening right now in Iran, and that's because of President Trump again. So we're seeing this deep state, long-term plans that have been implemented, being thrashed, taken down. They're scrambling. They're in our face a lot of times with some of the stuff, and it's very obvious to many of us. You especially are able to pick a lot of this stuff out. What were your thoughts on President Trump bombing Iran and how that made things start to move in an even faster pace?
Well, we could go with the military response of hell yeah, but but we probably need to go the more, informational piece. But it goes back to, it shows the dash 45-47. I try to remind people daily that the whole thing is a visual. It gives you a visual like of an occupation, an operation. 45, the dash, and the 47. The whole thing is an operation by unique laws and orders. And it shows when you go back to 2017 through 2020, when all the capitulations took place, it shows what nations capitulated and what nations basically were saying, we want to be a part of world history the correct way. And so many people are, and it's okay in one way, but all the chatter about Israel and people saying, oh, I saw a lot of people calling themselves patriots, like dogging other patriots, saying, oh, you people are going to be sorry. Israel was the one who, assassinated JFK and all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay. Here's the smart aleck in me, but also the guy that says, look, what's more prevalent right now? All right, if you believe JFK is alive, then you believe he's alive, or he lived and he went to witness. If you believe he was assassinated, then he was assassinated. All right, which means he's not with us. All right. So which one's more prevalent? A nation who has nuclear weapons that we absolutely know they have by all general reports, by our generals and President Trump and also other agencies around the world, or some guy that is in our history books, rightfully so? Which one's more prevalent though? So when you go with that aspect, then you got to outline that, look, I have it in my book, and I don't, it's just a saying I've heard, but you create a problem, you have a solution to. And that's what the deep state did. They would create problems they already had solutions to. Whether or not they were going to use the nukes or not, doesn't matter. They could have escalated it up and then make it look like they saved the day to do what? Stay in power, make more money, sell a book, whatever it may be. So they created a problem they have a solution to. And you have to go back and go ask yourself, okay, why before 1979 were women in style in Iran? They were wearing makeup. They weren't having to wear their burqas. All these other that were forced to wear the burqas. None of those things. All right. So Iran was flourishing just like other countries were. And then all of a sudden in 79, Jimmy Carter declares a national emergency in executive order. And it's the oldest executive order with a national emergency. It's been continued 44 years, which it was. I use the number 37 because President Trump, when he took over in 2016, that wiped out that they were continuing these for deep state reasons. But technically, it's been continued 44 years. All right, so that's what President Trump's solving. And all these people out there who were, oh no, not our war. If you're a Republican conservative, that really looked bad on you. Because it shows you haven't studied. Well, if you've heard of us, you haven't studied what's in place that you can know to see that this is most definitely a military operation, military occupation, continental government, and then study that to know that. So all the liberals over there yelling that, I'm like, it was, I hate to say it like this because it's not supposed to look like this, but it was your people who established these executive orders with these national emergencies. It was Obama who had the national emergency with Yemen. Where were these people with Yemen? We declared an actual conflict with Yemen on March the 15th to May the 6th this year, and we were bombing them. So no one was, because of Iran being a bigger topic, right? Everybody panicked. And it's like, no, this was an operation. President Trump is wiping out. And to prove it, I've told people before, I know what little service I had in the military. I'm not a war hero. I'm not a decorated hero. I'm not any of that. I know what I did. You don't have to remind me. I'm pretty sure that I know my background. All right. But our oath never expires. It says foreign and domestic. Foreign was not put in there for foreign. It was put in there in 1862, meaning anybody who was foreign to our nation and our ideologies, like the liberals are acting right now, they really could be lassoed up by law for acting like foreign agents. So that's what that's for. And I brought that up to say, when you look at what's going on and then you look at the laws and orders in place, this is the greatest operation known to man. And when people say that to me, I'm like, well, I don't really care. But here's what's going on. And so, the Iran situation, 44 years of that, Obama, Executive Order 13611 was Yemen. Then he had one national emergency, but 4 executive orders in 1 year in 2014 with Ukraine. 3 of those were in 1 month. So I'm like, all this stuff is festered to a point, and here's President Trump. He's ending all these things. And then you have Syria. So Syria was a topic that we were told when I was in not to talk about. All right, because here was Obama, and I'm not going to remind people what Putin said about Obama back then, because it's coming out of a white dude's mouth. Someone's going to spin it somehow. But he said some pretty harsh, racist things about Obama way back when. And so Syria is one of those topics that it's finally coming to the surface more and more and more. All right. And there was another nation that we were involved in when I was in. And I tell people, I know what my service was, but I was involved in something that when it's time to talk about, where it don't look like it's about me, because it's not, it's going to allow people to see where God placed me in the world, in the path and everything. While I started studying and figuring this stuff out and whatnot. And then I have some key connections to something that also ties in, and they also watch us as certain people, and they'll be unveiled in the future. But that whole thing to do with Syria, President Trump literally just this past week ended all these executive orders with national emergencies with Syria and opened up their market for the U.S. to enter their market. The same thing he just did with Vietnam. When you really think about what's going on, that opens up all of the questions for veterans of Vietnam era who were treated the worst ever. Out of all veterans, they were horribly mistreated. Doesn't matter if they were draftees or they signed up or not. They were all mistreated. We shouldn't have ever been in Vietnam. All that's going to open up the Lyndon Johnson, the George Bush Sr., and all that crew from that era, the JFK Moore files. So as we move into the future, they had to do this delicately because veterans do have a high rate of suicide. And you can't just come in there and dump all this stuff, making like all your service wasn't valuable because these wars were all bullcrap. No, you have to flip it over on the deep state to show it was them and their quote unquote diplomacy, as they call it. They created a problem they had a solution to. So President Trump is the first president to revoke and terminate executive orders with national emergencies of the deep state swamp. All right. And opening up the markets, not terminating them like some did that in the past. They terminated it, but they created something else. He's terminating it and opening the market up, the actual economy and trade market. So Syria added to that, and Vietnam added to that just this week. That's it's phenomenal, historical, whatever the words you want to call it, but it's going to open up and allow also again, not resetting in a bad way, but it's a fundamental reset, not a fundamental change. But it's also going to open up and allow some of this to enter the courts. He's the one that posted just a couple of days ago, reposted again, all roads lead to Obama, and share if you would like to see public military tribunals. So it is prevalent to President Trump. I keep telling people who want justice, they're setting everything up, all right, and they got to set it up for our future. Also, all those checks, like check marks and different things you got to do, like for making sure we never get to this place again, right? So like accountability, responsibility, transparency, honesty, communication, all the things like you and I know, discipline, structure. You got to have all these things where we can maintain and sustain this, and then we don't have to worry about a group of people festering to a point. We could just find one person who's an infiltrator and go, no, you're out of here, like President Trump's shown.
Wow, fantastic. So, Vietnam, the Vietnamese now love Trump. They make statues of him. I've talked to some of these people. It's incredible. They love Trump. You look at Syria. Some people are posting that the Syrians are dancing in the streets for President Trump. So something's up. President Trump obviously is making a difference. Now, when I left the military, it was still under Bush. And then a little while later, I started working for the CIA, and it was under Obama. And I went to all these countries that we're having problems with now. And I can tell you that Iran was the problem. And we know that the people of Iran were about, during that Arab Spring, they're ready to, like, all these countries are going down. We're gonna go off too. We're gonna get rid of our, evil, group. And Obama didn't back them. They needed someone to back them, because they have Hamas and Hezbollah will come in and just basically kill the people in the streets. Two other Iranian, groups that, I've had to deal with those people in Afghanistan, Iranians, all these. Iran, it's every place I went. Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Lebanon, all of those, Libya, all of those places, you could see the mark of Obama's, screwing everything up. Obama and Clinton, right? They were screwing up the whole Middle East, and now Trump's cleaning it up, and the liberals are fighting him the whole way. It's crazy to me.
Well, what's funny was just this past week, I had posted, I was re-channeling what you and I talked about in our podcast on that. And I put up this post, and you can only put 4 photos up on True Social, just same thing as X. And so I was trying to get it all in one. And I saw a message come through on my Facebook. It just so happened to see a notification that says your True Social is not showing up. I was like, uh-oh, because it had nothing to do with location and if you had service or not. So I looked on there, and sure enough, they had deleted it, my profile. And so I text Siggy really fast, and I said, hey, and I shot her the screenshot, and she's like, I'm on it. And so she loops me in, and I haven't told who it is yet, but she looped me in on a group text, and he's like, all right. He right to Devin Nunes, and it wasn't. I mean, I don't know, because I was driving. I pulled over because trying to focus, and it wasn't probably 30 seconds. And I pulled down the like the refresh, and it was back up. And so I screenshot it, and I was like, "Oh, back up! Thank you so much. Like, this is awesome." And he goes, "I'm just." Repeating, he was like, holy shit, that was quick. Like, it was quicker than what he thought was going to happen. And so it was kind of funny. And I said, well, and I told Siggy, I said, well, I'm not a publicity person. I don't even, coming out of country music, you know the term publicity, and there's ways to seek good publicity, and there's negative publicity, and there's negative that you can do on your own if you don't care about it. And then there's negative that was brought on to you. And you learn to live with it. But I was like, I told her, I said, well, shows I'm directly over the target, because I said, the last thing I posted, was this. And she was like, holy, of course, Siggy don't care where we are. You could be in the most formal ever, and she's going to drop an F-bomb or whatever. And don't care. One time she said that while I was standing around, and President Trump was there, and she dropped the bomb, I mean, like right in front of everybody. And he goes, see why I keep her around? I love her. I tell people all the time, like, he loves that stuff. He loves when you're just passionate, but also don't care. It's like, okay, there's 7 forks and 5 spoons, and you skip them. He loves that, right? It's like, so, but I had posted the Obama, Gaddafi, and also Osama. And I said, look, ladies and gentlemen, here's what's coming, because President Trump is going back through all roads lead to Obama. He put up the photo of President Trump. He put up the photo of Obama standing over the cash pile, and it says the 1.7 billion. So I'm like, he's putting this back up again. All right. And then the all roads lead to Obama photo on the bottom of it was the one that said share if you'd like to see public military tribunal. So I'm like, this is President Trump's official page. So I said, he's starting this again. And with the Iran situation, that's your executive order 12170 by Carter. So he's finishing that, and talk about regime change. Well, they're getting that stirred up out there. So when you see what comes in the future and the Abraham Accords, Syria doing what they're doing, Qatar, and all the other different countries who are working right now on everything. I said there's a lot more Abraham Accords countries coming in, and you'll start seeing that. But you're also going to see the justice part, because in that March 19, 2024, it was 4 months before the quote unquote assassination, which we all know. Anybody that knows it can study it. It's all special operations in the 2016 unconventional warfare. And so that case is, that's going to be of the future. When I don't know when they're going to show it, but that case, when it says, can a president order SEAL Team 6 to commit murder on a political rival? And that's the one that I text Jaco's sweet wife, and I said, hey, you got to get him on ASAP. And let's do a show on this before anybody else gets it, because this man right here is the one that needs to be talking about it, because SEAL Team 6, the last time SEAL Team 6 that I know of was involved with anything with the president, public, was Osama. And that was May the 2nd, 2011. And 5 months later, Gaddafi. And if you go to Wikipedia, which I don't highly recommend sometimes, but sometimes they're pretty accurate, it says that Osama was killed or died, and the term with Gaddafi is assassinated. Well, that's going to open a massive can of worms with this, because one of the key, it's like 3 amici curiae, which are friends of the court. One of them is General Keith Kellogg in this petition, which gives me chills every time I think about that, because President Trump has highlighted him all along the way. He's also the author of the 2017 National Security Strategy, which is the most recent and last one posted on the Department of Defense. They don't have Biden's 2022 up, and let's be honest, it's 2025. There's plenty of time for them to put a little emoji picture up on that site if Biden was real and president, and also recognized by the DOD and the military. So that case specifically says not only there's a 3 amici curiae, but it also says multiple leaders and senior executives astounding no. So that's going to open a massive case for not only Obama, but Hillary Rodham Clinton with Benghazi, Libya, because of Gaddafi. And he's the one that stood there in front of all those leaders. It's all recorded. And he was mocked and laughed. And he said the United States is going to do, and he was talking about the old United States. He was talking about the 2016, ladies and gentlemen, and prior. He said the United States will do the same thing to you that they did to Saddam Hussein. All right. And if you don't get chills over that, because that man's dead and gone now. And he stood there and told him that. And the former leader of Syria that fled, he was the one they showed laughing at him. So this was a massive military operation, and there's no way President Trump did this as a regular president. And it required multiple strategic layers of plans by the likes of Jaco and different people on that caliber, with the mindsets and the history that Colonel Sellers and Lieutenant Colonel Bosey and Major Jim O'Connor's. I mean, this was a strategic plan that had every checkpoint, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all kinds of flanks. If something happens here, we can do this. If this happens, we can do that. I don't know, man. It's hard to describe what we're living through. It really is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You're doing a good job of describing it, so I appreciate your insights. One of the things that I like to look at is long term. What this looks like in the future. It looks like to me that the United States will be the superpower of history. Everybody's going to look back and say it was because of the United States under President Trump that the whole world was turned around. Now, one of those I think that's working with Trump is President Putin, and I think they're kind of like in the background. President Trump comes in and says, "All right, I'll stop this war. Let me see Zelensky." Zelensky comes in. Zelensky's like, "No, I'm not going to stop the war." And he runs to the UK, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll back you if they're not going to back you." So it was exposed. Everybody whined and said, "You said you would stop it the first day." Well, I can't stop it if you have, the president of Ukraine saying that he's going to continue the war. He's not going to deal. And I'm a man that likes to deal. And if they're not going to deal, then we're going to move forward. and we're going to cut off aid. So that's what Trump has done. He's cut off aid to Ukraine. NATO, the other NATO members, they don't have enough to like keep this war going. And as we're talking, Russia is steamrolling over Ukraine, just decimating their military, which I think they're going to continue to do. And eventually, just like Putin said, Ukraine is part of Russian history, and we will have Ukraine. So I'm like, yeah, you're going to do that. What are your thoughts on that little deception? I think that's going on. People think that Trump is not supporting Ukraine. We even Congress that wasn't going to vote on the big beautiful bill because there wasn't enough money in it for Ukraine. So it's sickening to me. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's the whole operation, the whole going back to the July 16th, 2018 soccer ball. Going back to history first, people need to know a little of that history. It's the old school tactic of divide and conquer, right? It was part of their strategic plan to divide up all these nations. Who gave them the right? Who gave all these people, and of course, a lot of them are dead and gone now, but who gave them the right to go in there and divide up the Soviet Union? So there's that straight up, and it's the old divide and conquer. And then they say, well, you can be this kind of nation with this kind of government. You can be this one and that. So they all set this up, all the swamp. So a lot of people need to go back to that. And then, it's hard to really talk about it without, using Reagan and Bush too, because, but then you kind of have to. President Trump's been real delicate around that with President Reagan because he did like him. But it shows really the lobbyists and all the people back here. I tell people all the time, the ones that have the guns on you back here, until you are in that position as a senator, congressman, representative, whatever you are, until you are in that position, you don't really know what you would do. And a lot of these people thought they could get in. And it would be one or two here and there that had the strong voices, and then they would get quelled really quick, and then the swamp just kept going. So, when you look back at 89, you look at the Cold War, you look at all the things that have led up to now. I remind people, Putin was not president from 2008 to 2012. He was prime minister, so he still knew some things and knew he could have known all, but he wasn't president. That's when Obama and Hillary and Biden, they were really making a lot of their moves during that time period. And so, there was a new date put on this war because when President Trump does solve all this, everybody from 2021 back are not going to be able to claim that they were a part of this. So, the war really started in 2014. You could make a case before that. But it really started on history books in 2014. All right, there's your date right there. There's your 4 executive orders with Obama starting in March, 3 of them in March and 1 in October of 2014. They only had 1 of 2 rounds in 2014 for voting. That's when Obama called him 3 days later and congratulated him and all that. Also, 2014 was when Victoria Nuland, who was working for the Obama administration, she's the one that got caught, verified on tape, even though it was audio, it was verified via official White House documentation that it was her saying F-U-C-K, the European Union, which that would be like me cussing you. You're supposed to be my brother, right? That ain't what they wanted her to be saying on a phone call. So there was a lot of tie-ins. Biden at that time, real Biden, made 7 trips in 7 months to Ukraine on your taxpayer dollar. And so all this stuff, Mitt Romney, his child was working there, John Kerry, Nancy Pelosi, and then we know Biden and Hunter. So all the swamp, they were licking their chops. In 2004, there's The Hill or The Guardian, one of those put out that you can click on, and the Department of Defense was the one funding the biolabs. In my documents, I managed to get it before they deleted it off the actual U.S. Embassy page, which you'd have to believe, with today's technology and AI and all the things people could do. Some people wouldn't believe it because they didn't see it when it was timestamped on it and actual on the website, but I managed to get all those screenshot and timestamped where we were funding. It showed how much money we were sending to those biolabs by our Department of Defense and the United States government. So, you know, this was, and then it ties back into Uranium One, which President Trump said was the greatest scandal of all time, which it really is, a $145 million deal. And so all this ties in. And I do believe that Putin was already, I either believe he was already in special operations with it because of the kind of person he's known to be and already was before 2008, or he could have capitulated in another kind of manner going, yep, I didn't realize what was going on, or maybe he did, but he wasn't a direct part of it and no crimes against humanity on him. And he took a deal, which that could be the soccer ball, the complete version of it, depending on which one it was. But that was still the visual anyway of, yep, you know, let's just go with the words what NATO called him, the NATO chief, call him Daddy Trump, you know, say, yep, you whatever you say, because it would have been the military back here with President Trump. You know, see, that's what people don't see in these meetings, or who the ones who are really in the room, not the stuff they show you on TV. That's how President Trump was able to do this to the whole world, the Queen, North Korea, China, I mean, Modi in India, all these people, Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, Putin, you know, but let's say that he had let's say that he had some bite out of that uranium deal, but it still wasn't something crazy significant. What President Trump, it's just an idea. I mean, I tell people to think outside the box, but this is what a special operation would kind of look like. He could say, all right, you were doing this and you were doing this. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into Ukraine. You're going to take out these biolabs, but the media is going to smear you. That will be your part of the deal, is that you have to take the smear on what's going to take place to you. And then on the flip side, when it's all said and done, here's what it will look like. And here's how we will all come together. And then, you know, as we move into the future. So that's just an idea for people. But that soccer ball was clear, you know, and what brings it all in is when you do the timeline. So 2014, all that stuff we just mentioned. 2018 was a soccer ball. Shortly after that, in October, President Trump announced that we were leaving the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. All right. So that actually sounds scary to some people if you go read it, but it's not. It actually promotes the polar opposite. It's called a MAD doctrine, mutually assured destruction. All right. So it would be to where, okay, you won't react if someone's going to, until someone bombs you, right? You won't do it to them first. It will be more like a self-defense mode if that was going to happen. But because you have nuclear power and they might have nuclear power, it'll come to a standoff, in which results in basically nuclear peace when you go read that. All right, so that was 2018. And so when you go to 2022, when the new declared war took place, it was Victoria Nuland all throughout 2021. See, all these people from the past, they brought into the quote-unquote Biden administration. All right, showing that cohesiveness of the swamp. All right, so Victoria Nuland was the undersecretary for quote-unquote Biden. All right, and all throughout 2021, even on the press, Psaki and all that, there's no nuclear weapons. That's a conspiracy theory, and no biolabs and all this other stuff. All right, it's a conspiracy theory. They're making this stuff up. Tulsi Gabbard, you know, this was when she was making a name as a Democrat, but swapping over. Tulsi Gabbard, Mitt Romney called her a conspiracy theorist, and it was all false. All right. And so the same week, Victoria Nuland's under oath, under congressional oath. And it was Marco Rubio, who also President Trump annihilated on the 2016 campaign trail. I mean, annihilated him too. So Marco Rubio was asking her, are there biolabs in Ukraine? And after all throughout 2021 of no, there aren't, and that's a conspiracy and all that, under oath, she goes, yes, but we were afraid the Russians are going to get them. And it's like, oh, they got them all right. That soccer ball got them. And so what ties that all in and makes this so awesome was when you do the optic of the soccer ball. So Zelensky wanted to run an ad for the FIFA World Cup. And the FIFA World Cup said, no bueno, not happening. All right, so there's that. But also, the bigger key with the soccer ball is there was one nation who didn't play in the FIFA World Cup. It was Russia. All right, so it shows the sacrifice that they had to take and make, and that would have been part of that deal. You know, I know that's not, some people think football, really, but yeah, football, soccer in those regions is their life outside of the rest of their life. And that would have been a big deal. And it also shows what their men were also signing up and tasked to do as well.
Wow, what incredible insight! Yeah, I knew all those different things, but I didn't put them all together. Well, they knew that was coming from way back, and like you said,
Way back.
I've seen these guys make these deals. You know, when I was in the CIA, when I was in, you know, special protective details and all kind of crazy stuff, I would hear these guys talk, you know, and like, wow, these guys are like they have gamed this out so far out. It's just incredible. But yeah, that's a great example of it. Now, we're seeing the collapse of their money. So by Trump sealing the border, of course, you don't have the drugs and of course, the human trafficking, which makes them far more money, the child trafficking and so forth. You know, 300,000 children that are missing. Come on, Democrat Party. So that you're the party of, you know, child. We're not going to go there, but anyway. So we're seeing USAID exposed, destroyed. We're seeing Act Blue disclosed, being destroyed as we're speaking. Tammy Bruce with the State Department. When I traveled overseas, I traveled undercover of the State Department, so I understand the things that happen within the State Department. The CIA is pretty much puppeting the State Department for a great extent, but it seems like with Marco Rubio and now with Tammy Bruce, that has stopped. She disclosed that 90% of aid that goes to foreign countries is they don't know where it went. So from now on, they're going to start to really crack down on that. So imagine all these money pots that are drying up. This is going to destroy them on a fast pace. What are your thoughts?
Well, my dad always has a saying that money talks and bullshit walks, you know? And so, you know, President Trump from the get-go, and I try to still, again, remind people that, you know, 45-47, that's the whole operation, the whole thing. You can't ever separate it. So you got to go back to what he was saying in 2016, especially on the campaign trail, but also in 2017 when he really, you know, was at the visual helm of the presidency. His first thing was follow the money. Follow the money. He kept repeating that. All right. And so you and I both know, and anybody with any kind of collective mind on any kind of operations, whether it be military and or just regular economics, you know, if you don't have money, can't operate. But, you know, if you're a bad person operating with dirty money, as we know, then when your dirty money disappears and you have no money, but especially if you're like a figure to the public out there, what are you going to do? You're going to retaliate, and that could be verbal or physical, and or both. So everybody's seen that. So that's why I always tell people, well, if you're a good person from the start, you don't have anything to worry about. And so all these people are showing their colors, and that's why they'll say things about President Trump along the way. But what people need to know is that as President Trump, especially when he gives them a nickname or he focuses in on them, like, I wish I'm going to wait till the time I can actually say this, but he said something one day to us, and I was like, I had chills instant. But he was basically saying that he reiterated basically, I know everything on everybody. And one day I'll wait and do it on your show. You know, that way we can circle back one day when I want President Trump to know I don't go around saying everything he says. You know, certain things are private at the moment, but it gave me chills because I was like, and I mean, I already knew it, but just hearing it in a private setting, I mean, I was just like, I looked over at Siggy and I'm like, you know, like that was like, But it was another form of basically saying, I know everything, I have everything. And so, it's and that's the other key thing too, correlating that. It's like he knew long before he went down that escalator, right? He knew what this was going to look like, this was going to look like, and the end's going to look like. And so, that's the key thing for people to hold on to. But yeah, I mean, it's the takedown of the money trails, and we've had. This is another thing that it's hard to. It's not hard to separate, but it's hard to get people to see. But there's been drug trafficking busts before, sure, but they didn't put a full-fledged joint partners. We're going to wipe this out in massive droves and go after their full rings and their full operations. So yeah, under Obama and every other president, you'd see a headline here and there that, drug trafficking was busted here, or this ship was going here, and but President Trump established a full-on war on April the 1st, and I think he did that strategically on April the 1st, 2020, being April Fool's Day, being like, no, this ain't no joke. But Southern Command, 22 joint partners, they launched a full-out war on trafficking, and they have been annihilating them. I mean, it's been all you got to do is spend time on coastguard.mil and a few other sites out there. And I mean, they've been just knocking them out all over the world. And our Coast Guard is all over the world more than they are on our coast, with the Navy and Royal Navy and all the other different Saudi Arabia, different navies. And they have been knocking them out left and right. So, and of course, you and I both know that drug trafficking does fund a lot of the other trafficking. It's all connected. It's interwebs. And so President Trump was the first to establish the subterranean warfare strategic tactics publications. We've always had tunnel rats, and I know you've known them your whole life, and Colonel Sellers, different people, but there's a full-fledged strategic operation that was geared around, taking out these bunkers and taking out the underground facilities, and those all tie in as well to trafficking. So it's just been it's a world takedown, man. It's like, I don't know. Again, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, definitely. And, the underground systems they're real. We saw like 3 of them hit, I believe, in Iran. And then right across the border where we used to deal with terrorists that would come across the border in those same locations in Afghanistan and in Pakistan where we used to deal with terrorists. There were other, 10K, that seems to be the level that a lot of the DUMs around the world were, earthquakes at that level too. But the earthquakes are different. They're not like, those ringing earthquakes that you get. It's like a sharp wham, and then it's just an energy that goes out from that shock wave. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going on underground too. The war, it's pretty secretive. What's being taken down on the surface. Underground, it's not secret at all. Those guys are really doing some amazing jobs. From what I've heard, and it's pretty dramatic down there. All right, so getting closer to an hour. Any last words, and give us some insights? How people can reach you, your 3 books, and so forth.
Well, I mean, I just tell people to just hang on. I mean, it's a journey, not a destination. It's all going to have a silver lining, I do believe, from that standpoint, because there will be justice. People will see it when the time is right. I just think President Trump, what they're doing on the bigger levels is one, the financial system that had to be reset, the trade, the world trade, the tariffs, making sure all other nations are operating on their own as well. I mean, the Indo-Pacific Agreement 2019 specifies that all nations will be sovereign on their own, not dependent on others. There will be reciprocal trade, as President Trump titled it, which will be fair for both. And then, like you said, and not all tariffs are bad either. I mean, there's certain things that can balance out depending on what it is and how much they have of it. So sometimes a tariff's not a bad thing either. But there's a way to balance it out. You say, okay, if you put a 40% on us, well, We'll put a 20% here on you on this, and it'll balance out. So all that's having to take place outside of your military. So you have your economic that's taking place. All the nations that dump the dollar, that's a good sign showing you that, okay, that's being reset. That's another thing that the deep state did. They'd print more money. They never would account for ours. I mean, you got to pull out a dollar bill and look at it, ladies and gentlemen. It's got two numbers on there that are key to what? Accounting. And we never accounted for all this stuff. So what did the deep state do when they couldn't account for it? They just printed more money, and then they taxed you for it. All those things had to be sorted out. The gold, Fort Knox, all the jokes about Fort Knox and the gold. Now you have the gold-backed digital separate from central banks. So you had all those things taking place. So, my thing is like getting the discipline, the structure back, the transparency, the honesty, the responsibility with everybody. President Trump's approval rating, 62%. It's the highest any president ever. All right. But when we get that, maybe around 75, 80%, I think that's when they bring in the justice. Maybe. I could be wrong. But, the more people that you have that are seeing all the corruption in every aspect of what they have been living under in the past, everybody sitting here walking, living, breathing has lived under that corruption. There'd be no one here that would be worthy of listening if they were born in 2015. So let's be honest. Everybody here lived in some form of the deep state system. So when all these people that are your friends and family who are negative or Debbie Downers or just can't see it or whatever it is, when they start seeing the light and they start seeing the corruption, when they start demanding justice, then it's like President Trump said, we're going to win so much, you're going to get tired of winning. Well, when you get majority of your opposite actually going, I want to see justice, then that's how we have a true fundamental reset, and we can also move forward in the future and it not be this dog eat dog that we've all been accustomed to, and it shouldn't look like that. So many people need to focus on that aspect, not so much of Democrat versus Republican still. And so even though you do have to focus on some of them, but there's a lot of Republicans who are bad too. So other than that, I mean, it's still laws show we're in a continuity government, a partial. And until that is completely revoked, when you see that, it will happen. And when that happens, then you'll be able to see a lot more visuals around to see that, wow, the golden age, as President Trump calls it. Tonight, I highly recommend his speech tonight. He's been saying for 2 and 3 years, Memorial Day 2025, July 3rd, the World Fair, and July the 4th were big markers. So I highly recommend listening to his speech tonight. I have a friend that's front row tonight in Iowa. So, I highly recommend that. There's probably going to be the comms dropped in there. I'll be listening. And if I hear him say anything that sounds like it gets, lost in the shuffle, then I'll pick it out and tie it in where it is with the law, depending on what he says. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. He had said July 4th leading up to the year before. So the 250th is next year. So he said this July leading up to the year. So there's going to be some stuff there. So yeah, my books are on rattletrap1776.com. If you want them signed by me, if you're international and or like if you have a birthday or you need it quick, sometimes we're not, we don't have inventory on hand. I have to order every so often. Then the best way to do it is Amazon. Amazon's been cleaned out, by the way. President Trump has a store on Amazon now. So Bezos was one of those that was affected by Executive Order 13959 with a nice mercy, still going. But Amazon's been cleaned out, so they are safe. President Trump hammered them. So either way is fine with me. That's the way you can get it.
Wow, Derek, fantastic show. And thanks for coming on. 4th of July is tomorrow. I was just kind of down in my town running some errands here in North Lake Tahoe. Everybody's out there having a great time. Families are out there. So enjoy your 4th of July weekend. Get some good food, and we're going to see some good things coming in the future. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Definitely so. Happy 4th to you, and can't believe you told me you're in Tahoe. I love that place. I'm jealous. But anyway,
And
happy
the north
4th.
side
And,
in the I'm in the Nevada side. So California, Nevada, good.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I've been all through there, man. That is so. Oh, yeah.
Yep,
That's
beautiful.
that big winding road as you're going in the Nevada side, man. You better.
Right.
I tell people, you better make sure your brakes are working on that thing, because you'll get to going too fast down that downgrade, that steep grade.
Yeah.
So,
and you want to like look out there because it's so beautiful, but you got to focus.
Yep. You'll be a NASCAR driver before you know it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
all right, Derek.
All right. Well, happy 4th to everybody, and happy 4th to y'all.
Thanks a lot.